We have a loaded show coming your way on the Los Angeles Lakers Report by Chat Sports, but first, we'd be remiss if we didn't honor Kobe Bryant, Gigi, and those tragically lost in that awful helicopter accident 2 years ago today, which took away Kobe Bryant, an all-time legend who provided us so many highlights and memories in the purple and gold. So prior to us starting the show, I want everybody watching right now to get into the comment section and show some love to the Bryant family and those who are really suffering from this loss 2 years later into the comment section. Spam MAMBA as many times as you want, and let's get today's show started where we break down the latest Lakers trade rumors. You're watching the Lakers Report by Chat Sports. I am your host, Chase Senior. Appreciate all of you for rocking and rolling with us here on the Lakers Report. Loaded Lakers trade rumors coming your way, and there's a bunch of breakdown on a multitude of fronts. But first, a roster move for Los Angeles for a player who's really brought this team a lot of energy over the last couple of weeks, and a player who management probably didn't expect to be on this roster for the long haul. That is Stanley Johnson. This coming from Shams Charania of The Athletic. Forward Stanley Johnson has agreed to a new 2-year deal with the Los Angeles Lakers. Johnson's final 10-day contract expires Wednesday, but his contagious defense, energy, and play earn him a guaranteed contract the rest of the year. And really, working off of what Shams had to say, he's given this team really good energy. And this is a player who was doubted. He was really a highly touted prospect coming into the league. Looked as though he was going to be a bust. And a couple of days ago, I love what he had to say, saying, "I'm only tapping into my potential as a professional basketball player." And we've seen that potential firsthand with Los Angeles over the last 14 games. 6.5 points, 2.5 rebounds. He's shooting almost 52% from the floor. And he's doing something which he didn't really do previously to this stint with Los Angeles. He's making threes, and he's become a pretty decent three-point shooter. Originally, to start his NBA career, he was looked at as just a really springy athlete, but now he's really developed into more than that. And the fact that he's affordable, the fact that he's still young, has some ability, and he comes on the cheap, it's kind of a good move for Los Angeles as a rotational bench piece. So I want to ask you this before we continue to break all of this stuff down and get into the latest Lakers trade rumors. How would you grade Stanley Johnson's play this year? Get into the comment section right now and let me know. A, B, C, D, or F, sound off and voice your opinions of Stanley Johnson into the comment section below me. Now we pivot to the much anticipated aspect of this show. February 10th, NBA trade deadline is coming up, and we've been talking about these trade rumors here on the channel a lot. And we've discussed John Wall previously. It's time to bring his name up once again. According to Mark Spears of The Undefeated, he discussed a John Wall trade with Brian Windhorst on their podcast. And Mark J. Spears said the only offer with the potential possibility of it happening is with the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, Wall has not played so far this year. He's making a lot of money. The Houston Rockets are moving forward with a youth movement. And I actually want to see John Wall back on a basketball floor because last year with Houston, coming off those injuries, namely the torn Achilles, I thought he was pretty springy, and I thought he played pretty well, and he looked somewhat healthy. Here's what Mark J. Spears had to say on that pod. Quote, "To me, the only trade for John Wall could be to the Lakers at the moment. I was told they have a couple of trades on the table, but the only one that really has some, realistic potential to it is with the Lakers for Russ. That 2027 first-round pick seems to be pretty coveted, right? And I would expect it to be included in such a deal. As of today, this is the only trade for John Wall. If it happens and Westbrook does come back, the Lakers get somebody back that at least they know. So I was told that they would be open-minded, as crazy as this may sound, for him to play with this team. I actually don't think it's all that much of a crazy idea. Russ for Wall wouldn't be the first time, so that aspect of it isn't really crazy. The salaries match, so it would actually work from a financial perspective. Russ on the books for a base salary of $44.21 million. Wall, on the other hand, right in that neighborhood at $44.31. And next year, Russ's salary bumps up to $47.06. Wall, once again, in that territory as well. And when you take a look at what both players can bring to the table, I think John Wall might actually be a better fit. I think he has a better feel for the game. I think he's less reckless. I think he could be a little bit more consistent. Both of these players are getting a little bit older, but I like what both can bring to the table, more so with John Wall on the Lakers' point of view. Last year, almost 21 points per game, a little more than 3 rebounds, a little less than 7 assists. He shot around 40% from the deck and about 32% from the floor. Now, the problem with both of these players, they're not the most efficient shooters. And while Russell Westbrook gives you the more well-rounded player, I just think John Wall would fit a little bit better on this roster. So here's a potential Lakers-Houston trade that was kind of floated out there by Mark J. Spears. Again, it works financially, and that's really what comes into play with a lot of these NBA contracts with a lot of these fat salaries. Lakers would get back John Wall from Houston. Russell Westbrook would go back to H-Town, and Houston would also continue that rebuilding effort and get a 2027 first-round pick. So I want to ask the Laker Nation if you would do this trade or not, because I do think it's pretty interesting. Get into the comment section right now. Type Y for yes, you'd make the trade. Type N for no. I'd really think long and hard about it. And if a trade does happen, you know who has you covered? The Los Angeles Lakers Report by Chat Sports. We're pushing out multiple videos per week. The views have really responded well. You have responded well in terms of your subscribers, so we're paying you back by saying, you know what? All of the numbers have been great. We take a look at the analytics. You're enjoying the coverage, so we're pushing out more content. If you want even more, you got to hit that red subscribe button down below as we get closer and closer to 50,000 subscribers. So Jerami Grant is another player who we have chopped it up and talked about here on the Lakers Report, and the Lakers have been said to have interest in Jerami Grant, but is that feeling mutual? Because Jerami Grant doesn't really have any interest in playing behind LeBron James and Anthony Davis. He wants to go to a team where he can be one of the top options. My problem with that, Jerami Grant, I like how you developed as a player, but you ain't a top option on a really good team. If you want to win games, you want to contend for championships, you're going to have to be a number 3. Eric Pincus of Bleacher Report saying this: I've heard mixed things on the Lakers even pursuing him. It's one of those things where sometimes a team will try and then get rebuffed and then put it out there that they don't like the player and they don't want the player. I don't know if that's the case here, but I've actually heard that the Lakers have kind of passed on Jerami Grant, that he doesn't want to play secondary or a territorial role to LeBron James and Anthony Davis, that they're going to have to invest big money in him. Speaking of that money, Jerami Grant this year, who's currently out with an injury that should allow him to come back at some point soon, averaging around 20 points per game. He's a very good two-way player. He's under contract one more year for 2022-2023. After that, though, he's going to be a free agent. So wherever he goes, he's going to be looking to lock down a long-term contract extension. And the problem for the Lakers, they don't have a lot of cap flexibility. So that report coming from Eric Pincus and then Perry Randall's best friend in Mark J. Spears. How about Dejounte Murray of the San Antonio Spurs? Could that be a player who the Lakers look to bring in? I'd love Dejounte Murray to come to Los Angeles. I mean, you see the look on my face. It makes me glow, and it makes me warm inside because Dejounte Murray is a borderline all-star and is having a terrific year for the San Antonio Spurs. Another one of those player development stories who has really come a long way in growing his offensive arsenal and has really become a well-rounded player who can rebound it, he can dish it out, plays really good defense, and I like his scoring ability at all 3 levels. You compare him to Russell Westbrook, and I'm taking Dejounte Murray any day. 19 points per game, 8.5 boards, 9 assists this year, and 2 steals per game. He's really burst onto the scene as one of the best young guards in the NBA. Here's the problem. This trade floated out there by Fadeaway World would be insane. And I mean insane for the Spurs to pull off, and I think there is absolutely zero chance that the Spurs would make this trade. It's actually kind of a joke to me. The Lakers would get Dejounte Murray and Keita beats Diop. The Spurs would get back Talen Horton-Tucker, who in my opinion is a damaged asset, as well as Kendrick Nunn, who's still injured, Kent Bazemore, who is clearly washed, and then that coveted first-round pick that Mark J. Spears alluded to that comes in 2027. The Spurs say no to this deal for a couple of reasons. With the way that Murray has been able to grow this year, he's really burst onto the scene as one of the best emerging young players in the league, and I think San Antonio looks at him as a franchise building block. So If I'm the Spurs, no way in hell I'm taking back THT and Kendrick Nunn, who are okay to good players, for a potentially great player in Dejounte Murray. But I do want to ask you this. Those rocking the purple and gold, showing your colors, which one would you want to rock the purple and gold and show those Lakers colors if you could pick one? Type G for Jerami Grant, type M for Dejounte Murray, embrace debate, and get your votes in down below. Los Angeles Lakers Report presented to you today thanks to our sportsbook partner, BetUS. I've really enjoyed gambling on football games all throughout this year. NBA prop bets, I'm all about those as well. Speaking of those NBA prop bets, you can get them in if you go to chatsports.com/Lakers and enter the promo code Lakers125. You put in $100 automatically. You get an additional $125 back. LeBron James odds to win NBA MVP right now at plus 4,000. So, for those unfamiliar with how betting odds work, let's just say you put in $10. You put $10 down for LeBron James to win MVP at plus 4,000 odds. If he were to win it, you get $400 back. So you're risking a little bit of money to make a lot. And let's say that LeBron continues to lead the NBA in scoring. He continues at 37 years old to have this masterful and really impressive campaign. And the Lakers end up soaring up the Western Conference ladder. I think he's in play to win NBA MVP. The record for the team just has to be a little bit better. When we talk about the Lakers making a trade, this is a talking point that we're going to continue to discuss and break down here on the channel because it really hinders Los Angeles to multiple degrees. The assets aren't there for LA to wheel and deal at the NBA trade deadline to bring in a serious piece to really move the needle for this franchise. They lack the player assets and they lack the draft assets. That's why they're putting out there that 2027 first-round pick. Now, for a rebuilding team and an organization, let's say the Oklahoma City Thunder, who continue to stockpile those picks under Sam Presti, he doesn't get ripped for tanking. Sam Hinkie did. Then that pick becomes pretty attractive for them. But for teams who are trying to win now, or maybe just reshuffle the deck a little bit in hopes that they make a trade and bring in a player in the future, that 2027 pick is somewhat of a middle-tier asset. Now, when you take a look at the Lakers' tradable player assets, here's who we're talking about. It's Talen Horton-Tucker and Kendrick Nunn. Everybody else, I don't really care about. I mean, just think about it. If you're running a sports organization, if you're running a business, and you're going to trade away one of your premier players, you can get a 2027 first-round pick. Cool. You know, that's not for another several years. But is Talen Horton-Tucker going to change the course of your franchise? Is Kendrick Nunn going to do the same? He's been injured all year, so you don't know necessarily what he's going to bring to the table. When he is on the floor, he's a good scorer. But Kent Bazemore, Trevor Ariza, DeAndre Jordan, I mean, if we're talking about these guys as tradable assets like 5-10 years ago, maybe. But folks, in case you missed it, it's 2022. As for the tradable draft picks for LA, here you go. 2023 first-round pick swap, 2026 first-round pick swap, 2027 first-round pick, as well as second-round picks in 2023 and 2025, and that aforementioned 2027 first-round pick. I will say this, though. Is there a moment of growth for the Lakers? Are they going to make a trade? Who knows? I do know that the Lakers win over the Brooklyn Nets on Tuesday night was a positive sign. It was on the road. Laker Nation was showing out in full force, as they often do at a transplant city like Brooklyn, which really doesn't have a fan base at all. Now, the Nets were without Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Kyrie still can't play because of those vaccination laws in New York. James Harden did go off for 33, 12, and 11, another triple dub for him. Anthony Davis able to come back to the floor, and while he didn't score that many points, he did play around 25, 28 minutes, and LeBron James just continued to do LeBron James things. Back-to-back steals, back-to-back dunks, really got that crowd litty. 33, 7, and 6 for him. Malik Monk continues to have a pretty surprising season in a good way. 22 points, 5 rebounds, 6 of 12 from 3. So he's really emerged as a three-point marksman for Los Angeles. And Russell Westbrook played a pretty clean brand of basketball. That 106-96 dub, impressive, albeit it came against the Nets team without KD and Kyrie Irving. At this point, you got to stack wins, you got to stack confidence level, and you got Anthony Davis back. So that adds to the confidence of this roster as well. I was encouraged by it. Were you? Type 1 for yes, type 2 for no. Thanks for watching today's show, and make sure you subscribe to the Los Angeles Lakers Report by Chat Sports.